Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Angie Aki, and welcome to our bi-weekly webinar series. I am the owner and founder of Ohana Investment Partners, and we do these webinars every 2 weeks to provide additional education to you as investors on different asset classes, different terminology, and just ways that you can educate yourself in a snippet of information in a very digestible format. These webinars are usually about 15 to 20 minutes. Realistically, this one's going to be a little bit longer today, and then you will receive the recording tomorrow as well. So I am super excited to be joined today by Blue Gems. They are here locally with me in Orlando. So we have JB, Julie, and Aiden. And there they are. So they'll be piping in. I'm going to walk through some of the slides, and then they'll be piping in with some feedback. And also we'll do a Q&A at the end. So I do ask if you guys have any questions along the way, if you'll just pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that we address everything as we go along. All right, so that being said, investing in short-term rentals. So is now a smart time to invest in short-term rentals? The short answer is maybe, right? So none of us have a crystal ball. The reality is, as far as the economy and what's going on in real estate,
$78,000.
we all.
How is this a comp?
I think Damone and Desmond, you are not muted. If you can mute yourself, that would be awesome. Thank you. So now may or may not be a good time to invest in short-term rentals, depending on your perception, right, and your opinion and your expertise. So we can look at it one of two ways. So your glass half full news and information is that there was 528,000 new jobs added in July of 2022. And this is all United States based data. The unemployment rate is currently very low at 3.5%. Consumer spending remains really robust, specifically within the services industry. Gas prices are finally declining, which is awesome. So I know a lot of us that drive quite a bit. This is amazing. Also for travel, for air travel. And the stock market has seen some gains in the recent months after it basically fell off a cliff earlier this year. So for those of you that know me, I don't really enjoy the roller coaster ride of stocks. I much prefer real estate, but to each his own, and there is some diversification that you can utilize. And then if you're looking at glass half empty news, consumer confidence is pretty low, inflation still remains high, and the housing market is slowing a little bit. We haven't seen anything drastic, but it is slowing a little bit, specifically with interest rates increasing. So that all leads to this question: why short-term rentals now? Demand is surging. So there's a huge shift to rural and outdoor activities. Either way, with or without the pandemic, short-term rentals are booming. The industry is absolutely booming. So whether we're looking at pre-pandemic levels or now post, either way you look at it, short-term rentals are booming. There's a supply and demand issue. So Airbnb is actually projecting a demand that will outpace the current supply by millions of short-term rental needs. So there's a huge supply and demand disparity. And there's a high cash-on-cash return with higher ADRs, or an average daily rate. So there's a demand for properties that are quote unquote distance friendly. And when we're looking at distance friendly, so I work with a couple of groups that really specialize in short-term rentals. Blue Gems is one of them. Really looking within the 5-hour range of a major metropolitan area so that it is drivable if people don't want to fly. Okay, so what does this mean for short-term investments? Demand for vacation rentals is as strong as ever. It's 16% higher than it was in June of 2021. And 23% higher than June of 2019, which obviously is pre-pandemic. There's 1.37 million active listings as of June of this year. So when you're looking at the data, it's about 25% year-over-year increase and a almost 10% increase based on pre-pandemic levels of 2019. some of the occupancy has dropped, and I really want to, we'll touch on this with you guys as well. Some of it's dropped about 9% year over year at about 60, close to 64%, but it's still up 8% compared to 2019. So there are some people that believe that occupancy rates will settle at around 57%. In my opinion and in my experience, a lot of this is going to depend on the operator. So I know with one group that I work with, their occupancy is right around the 73% range. Do you guys want to chat a little bit about what your occupancy range is and how you make sure that's optimized?
Yeah, so most of our portfolio actually operates around 80, 85%. And just like you alluded to, the operational component to it, right? How well you're actually managing the property goes a long way. So we're constantly trying to be cognizant of what we can add to the market that doesn't already exist, you know, whether it's a certain type of theme or a certain type of amenity. That way we can capture some of the audience and capitalize on occupancy to that capacity. My wife, Julie, does a great job at creating an experience for the guests. And whenever you're able to give an experience opposed to just a place to stay, then you can kind of force those rates to go higher. And obviously your demand is going to go up too. So.
Yep, absolutely. And that experience is really where a lot of, for short-term rentals, that's a really great way to optimize the ROI, right? Because people are, we'll get to that in a minute, but people are really focusing on the experience in general. So occupancy is going to remain one of the most effective measures of short-term rental success over a calendar year. So occupancy is really critical to your success if you're looking at doing this either as an active investor or looking at the operations team as a passive investor. Fully booked properties, obviously, they're going to generate more revenue. Empty properties are going to generate less revenue, and you're going to really see diminished returns. Short-term rentals are an emerging asset class. So this is an asset class a lot of people are paying attention to. The number of short-term rentals is actually larger than the leading hotel chains all combined. So these are national brands. You have more short-term rentals than all of these leading chains. Our societies really prefer short-term rentals. I know I do when I travel, right? So you have space, you have furnishings. I have a little boy, right? So, and the way I like to operate my morning, I want to wake up, make my own cup of coffee, and then chill out for a little bit. I don't want to get up and go to breakfast. I want to make breakfast and then we'll go about our day. So I really prefer short-term rentals. I'm sure a lot of you do too. I know one of the participants on this call is actually sitting in a short-term rental. So that's really great as well. I'm going to just take a minute. If you are not muted, please mute yourself as well. You can generate up to 4 times the cash flow versus traditional rentals or longer term rentals. And so longer term rentals are historically 7 to 12 or plus month rentals. So when you're looking at short-term rentals, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, your cash flow really, I mean, it skyrockets. So you can 4x your cash flow. There's much more upside on the cash on cash return as well. And then you will get a higher resale value because it's based on revenue. So it's really interesting. This asset class, in my opinion, kind of straddles the residential and the commercial real estate asset classes, because when you're looking at revenue, that's typically just commercial real estate, so 5+ units, right? But with short-term rentals, revenue is also a really large component as far as resale. So it kind of straddles both, and you're not just dependent on what the house or unit down the hall or the roads sold for. Do you guys have you sold a lot of your short-term rentals, or are you holding on to everything? I don't know if you guys had specific experience in this.
Yeah, so great point. I think one of the challenges is that the residential space hasn't really fully adapted to bringing on the commercial revenue. So you're going to have issues with your appraisals, right? So not everyone can actually have the appraisal based on the NOI. So they're actually having to sell based on neighborhood and what's going on in the streets nearby. So one way to kind of counter that would be to pay cash.
Pause break.
So one way you're going to get around that is paying cash. So we'll find a lot of our investors actually have to pull down STRs paying cash, and so they're going to base it off of the yield and not have to worry about what the guy across the street is selling for.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And then there are tax benefits, right? So you have depreciation of the asset, the furniture, and obviously there are business write-offs as well. So here are some short-term rental myths that we're going to debunk, and we're just going to walk through them. And if you guys have anything to add as well, please feel free. Short-term rentals have to be in a popular vacation destination. So this can or cannot be the factor, right? So typically destinations, right? Popular vacation destinations will generate a very high revenue, but the short-term rental does not have to be in a destination location specifically, if you're thinking about large destinations, right? So we're sitting in Orlando, it's a destination, right? So can you have a profitable short-term rental not in Orlando, right? Or not in Vegas, or not in Atlanta? I think the short answer is yes. And you guys can, weigh in on this as well. I know some of the other operators I work with as well, there are assets in Blue Ridge Mountains, Georgia, Panama City. There are, some in different areas as well, in the Poconos, right? So it's not, you may think it's a destination, but maybe it's not as large of a destination location as one would think, right? So people are really traveling to all sorts of places for all different reasons, whether it's for a move, whether it's for a vacation, whether it's for, oh, by the way, I haven't been there, I'm just gonna go work there, because so many people work remotely right now. So do you guys have any thoughts or input on that?
Yeah, like I think you really hit it on the head. And one of the metrics that we kind of pay attention to is, if a city has a thriving hotel community or hotels that exist there, the hotel industry has already done all of the due diligence and spent a ton of money researching that area to know whether it would have success or not. So for us to add one short-term rental in that vicinity, we could also have success as well. And it could be anywhere, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get to hotels, so I'm glad you brought that up as well. So another myth is that the ROI on short-term rentals isn't what it used to be. There's truly not a lot of evidence to support this. The pandemic didn't really hinder short-term rentals. In fact, the opposite is true, right? So people got antsy and they want to travel, and that was seen by, if you look at spring break and over the summer, the airports were jammed, right? Travel was crazy. People want to go places, and people are willing to pay for that experience. Like we talked about before, I know you said Julie really likes to provide an experience for your travelers. People want to travel, they want that experience, and they're willing to pay for it. Another myth is that there's a high barrier to entry. So you can enter into short-term rentals in a couple different ways. You can buy a turnkey property, you can buy with creative financing, or you can even use rental arbitrage with something like a lease option. So you can coordinate with the owner of the property, lease the asset, and then do short-term rentals through that property or that asset. Obviously, the landlord needs to be on board and know what's going on. But I have had some friends that have done this very successfully as well. And I know you guys do a lot of purchasing or acquisitions with creative financing, correct?
Yeah, of our portfolio, we actually have 4 creative financing properties, all subject to, we even have 1 rental arbitrage. So rental arbitrage is really neat because, like you said, the barrier to entry is really low. You can kind of, dip your toes in without having to buy a really expensive property to get started.
Yeah, awesome. Another myth is short-term rentals are a full-time job. So I think you could look at this from a few different lenses. managing short-term rentals is a lot of work. We are joined by Blue Gems Group. There's 3 of them, right? So it's a lot of work, but the amount of time you actually spend running your properties is up to you, and it has to align with your goals. So I know on last week's webinar, we talked about making sure your investing goals are very crystal clear. And so that goes into this as well, right? How much time do you want to spend on your short-term rental? You can hire a property manager, right? You can partner with people. You can do it yourself. So it's just like any other real estate investment, and that you can approach it any way that meets your investing goals. So I know for you guys, Blue Gems has 24 short-term rentals in their portfolio. It's an active investment for them. It's their business, and they do really, really well with it. For me, I have an equity share in 41 short-term rentals. It's 100% passive for me. I don't do anything. I wrote a check. I did my due diligence. I wrote a check, right? And that's it. So those are both extremes, and you can have the middle of the road as well, or you can go one side or the other. It depends on your investing goals. Seasonality will make or break you. There is still seasonality in different markets, but trends are really changing. And so sometimes in some locations where there would be a quote unquote off season, there's no off season. People are traveling all the time. People may be traveling from other countries coming in. So you may or may not have a lot of seasonality. And I don't know if you guys see in the locations where you are a ton of seasonality, or see that it's relatively steady throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, we're predominantly here in Florida. And like you said, travelers are constantly visiting, whether they're going to the beach or Disney World. They could be visiting from different parts of the country. So yeah, we don't really witness a lot of seasonality across the nation. I'm sure there's places like Poconos or Pigeon Forge that really experience that. But here in Florida, I would say pretty competitive all year round.
And then hotel to your competition. This is 100% a myth, in my opinion, and I don't personally believe in competition at all in general. So this fits right into what I would like to debunk. And JB mentioned this earlier, right? If you're going in to an area where there are already a few hotels, that's a great place to look to add a short-term rental to your portfolio. It's just like, right, CVS and Walgreens. They look for their quote unquote competition on the corner. They want the opposite corner, right? It used to be McDonald's and Burger King. I don't even know if Burger King's still around. But they would do the same thing, right? So you look to see where your quote unquote competition is, and you go there because there is a market there. So if you look also at hotels versus short-term rentals, 38% plus of bookings in short-term rentals were 3 rooms or more. Well, to pay for a hotel room with 3 rooms, holy cow, like that's a penthouse. So whether or not you want to pay, I don't know how many thousands of dollars a night for a hotel room, or you can get a short-term rental, right? So it's almost 2 totally different things. Also, I know long-term stays, which are technically more than 28 days, accounted for about a quarter of the bookings in Q1 of 2021. So if people are moving, right, they're gone, you have travel nurses booking short-term rentals. You just have people that are on a long-term holiday. And so they may be booking a short-term rental long-term. So here's some things and steps you can take to start investing in short-term rentals. Identify the best places to invest. So look at occupancy rates, understand the regulations in your markets, and that is huge. Also look at the rental history. If you can look back over 24 months, that's really helpful to look at trends and look at the true rental history. And I know you guys, I sent some information over to these guys earlier this week, and I said, hey, is this an area you're interested in? I have a lead, right? So remember, I want 100% passive. They're active, right? So great way to work with people, partner with them. I said, hey, what about this area? They said, I love this area. We can't have a short-term rental there, right? There's a regulation there. But they knew. I literally text them. They text me back within 5 minutes max, and that's probably because they didn't see it for 5 minutes. You have to know your market, and you have to know your regulations. Do you guys want to add anything to that? I was super impressed when you guys got right back to me and you're like, oh no, we can't have one there. I'm like, oh, wow. It's impressive.
Yeah, so 5 minutes was probably my longest time frame to respond. The regulations go in a few layers, right? So you have your county, you have your municipality, and then HOA. So all three have to be legal to actually operate there. So make sure when you're looking at a property, check the county first, property appraiser. It's going to have a municipality or it's going to be unincorporated, and then you go into the HOA.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Some other things you can do, you want to analyze your short-term rentals and the data in each market. So you want to look at seasonality, right? You're looking at monthly and daily revenues. You're looking at travel trends, historical trends. You're looking at booking windows. If it's seasonal, you have to account for that, right? Supply and demand. Look at your market with historical rates and market projections to get a sense of the potential. Look at the number of active listings and quarterly rent growth. Look at your avenue or your annual revenue trends. Look at your occupancy rates. Look at the types of amenities people are offering and what is the average daily rate that they're getting for those amenities. Is it worth you adding those amenities to provide an experience to your travelers? It may or may not. And then compare short-term rentals in multiple markets. So you have to look at multiple markets to figure out what's going to best meet your goals and your needs. Look at trends. Again, look at trends. You want to zone in on the data. Narrow down high-performing areas, property sizes. Compare trend lines, revenue, occupancy, year-over-year average daily rates, right? Look at all of that information combined so that you have the most profitable or the largest opportunity for return on investment with your short-term rental. And then strategic pricing, right? Pricing is obviously a huge impact on the success of your short-term rental. There's really no single rate that's going to fit your property 100% of the time. So you may have a different rate for a Wednesday evening versus a weekend versus a holiday, right? Versus on or off season. Your daily rate's going to change with this. It's a great idea to mystery shop. So this is something we do a lot with commercial real estate, right? As we're buying assets, we're mystery shopping if it's an apartment complex, we're mystery shopping the apartments down the road to look, what are they renting for? What are their amenities? What does their asset look like? What is the feel, right? So that we know where we are, where we can push rents or where it's under rented, where the opportunity is. It's no different with short-term rentals. And there is a sweet spot between your nightly rate and your occupancy, and this will allow you to optimize revenue. Do you guys have any tips or tricks to really optimize, right? So when you're looking at pricing versus occupancy or how you go about it?
Yeah, so there's a few tools on the market, especially for STRs. So we use Price Labs specifically, but there are other tools like Wheelhouse, which are equally as great. Lots of information as far as seasonality. They kind of tell you, in this time of year, you have EDC, so you want to hike up your prices for this weekend. Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, you definitely want to hike up your prices because you're going to get a lot of travelers that come in. So these tools are very similar to what hotels use. You'll notice that with hotels even, they'll have a random Tuesday through Wednesday that has way high prices. And what's the reasoning for that? It's because there's a conference in town that you probably weren't aware of. So these tools really help us as far as pricing and then maximizing on occupancy as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And then are short-term rentals a good investment? They absolutely can be a great revenue stream to add to your portfolio. Just like with any investment, there's a risk involved, right? There's also sizable returns when done right that you can capitalize on. So you just have to look at what are you willing, right? And so there's no silver bullet. So you have to put in the time and effort or partner with people that are willing to put in the time and effort to make sure these are profitable. Doing your research, making strategic investments, continually optimizing your listing. And I know you guys do this all the time, right? You're like tweaking, you're You're on that platform. Is there a conference in town? What are other rates? You have to stay on top of things to really increase your ROI. And so we talked about there's no silver bullet. Profitability is really, it's a result of a lot of different factors. Your property type, your size, right? Is it a condo versus a house? Is there a yard? Is there a game room? All of these go into play, right? And how profitable a short-term rental is. And if you're looking at, you know, either rental arbitrage, what is your rent you're paying the landlord? Or is there a mortgage? What's the mortgage, right? So all of these things come into play as well. Location is obviously really important. We talked about that. And some areas do deal with seasonality. So at the end of the day, does this sound like a lot of work? It is, right? It is. And so for me, it sounds like a ton of work. I know you guys, you know, work on it a lot. You really do such a great job and you spend a lot of time on it. So the short answer is it is a lot of work. So you really have to decide, just like any asset class, what type of investor do you want to be? Do you want to be an active investor? Do you want to be a passive investor? Do you want to look at a partnership, right? And like a JV partnership and kind of have a hybrid role? Do you want to work through all the steps? Do you want to tweak? Do you want to do the data analysis and try to stay ahead of the curve and really optimize your short-term rental listing? Or is it better to partner with someone that does the heavy lifting? And that's something that only you can answer as an investor. There are ways to invest in short-term rentals without doing all the work. So again, I know they have a portfolio of 24. You know, they have a team, they work on it. They're clearly, they know what they're talking about. They're really good at it. I have a passive investing portfolio. So I work with some people too that, you know, really have zoned in. They know the data, they optimize listings. And so that allows me to passively invest in 41 and have an equity share. So you could do both or one or the other, right? So the next step is if this is something you're interested in and you want to take the next step as a passive investor, you can download the websites on the slide, but you can download 5 steps to building wealth as a real estate investor without taking on another full-time job. And the QR code will link to my website as well. And again, there are ways you can connect with these guys. I know, and maybe you want to run through some of the services or ways that you've partnered with other people as well. I know these guys have partnered with people. I obviously passively invest in short-term rentals. I have a girlfriend of mine. She runs her own short-term rentals. I have another girlfriend that does short-term rental management. Close to here, and God love her. Like, I don't know how you guys do it. I really appreciate it. I feel like she's on the phone all the time. We'll have a conversation and it's like constant. And I'm not really cut out for that. So I do appreciate that. But if you guys, you know, want to talk about some of the ways that you've partnered with people, and in the interim, if you are, you know, you're watching this live, please go ahead and put in the chat some of the questions you have. And then once we wrap up, I'll turn off the recording and we'll go ahead and get through some of those questions. So have you guys partnered with people before as far as short-term rentals, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so to be able to scale to 24, which we did in about a 1.5 years time, it was only possible through partnerships, 100%. Most of the time, the partners that came on, because we are in operations, they just came on as a capital partner. They gave a financial contribution towards the closing costs, the down payment, and oftentimes the furniture design budget as well. And they took the really passive approach, just like you did, Angie, you know, so they take a percentage of the cash flow, they have a percentage of the equity, and it's a great opportunity to continue down that path where they can get exactly what they want from a passive approach, and then we can keep scaling our portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different ways to cut this pie, right? And to divvy up. And this is one of the reasons I love real estate. You can be active, you can be passive. There's JV partnerships. There's a ton of things you can do. So if this is something that you're interested in, I highly recommend that you reach out to Blue Gems or you reach out to me and keep the conversation going and let us know how you're interested in getting into short-term rentals, what that looks like for you, so we can help you meet your goals. That being said, I'm going to turn off the recording like always, and then we'll do Q&A live. So bear with me 1 second. And for those of you watching the recording, I will see you in a couple weeks. Have a great day.